we have someone who's up for the fight. It's the deputy leader of the Liberal Democrats, Daisy Cooper. After the general election calls yesterday, you're our first big political guest, Daisy Cooper.
Welcome.
So it's your moment at 6:43 to lay out your stall for the electorate.
Well, good morning. Let me first of all just say that I think right now people feel as though they have an incredibly raw deal. People are paying huge amounts in tax. They're getting a terrible service from our public services. They're seeing really big companies like the big oil and gas companies or the big water companies raking in billions of pounds in profit. And quite frankly, people feel quite rightly that they're getting a really raw deal. And what Liberal Democrats are proposing is a fair deal. And in many places around the country, in around 80 seats, it's the Liberal Democrats who are ideally placed, who are best placed to beat those Conservative MPs.
Our guest Andrew Pearce here has just predicted that the best that Rishi Sunak can hope for on July the 4th is a hung parliament. Your guys are projected at the moment to get up to 48 seats, nearly 50 seats. Would you join Labour in a coalition if there was a hung parliament?
Do you know what? There are millions of people around the country who haven't even decided how they're going to vote, many people who may not have even registered to vote right now. We are not thinking about the day after polling day. Liberal Democrats are completely and utterly laser-like focused on winning over the trust and support of voters around the country, and in particular in those blue wall seats where we're the key challengers to the Conservatives, and we will keep that laser-like focus right up until 10 p.m. on polling day.
But if you were to join a coalition, just to push this on you, what would your key conditions be?
Well, we will be publishing our manifesto in due course, and that will set out our policies and it will set out our platform. But what I can tell your viewers today is that we will be putting NHS and social care front and centre of our campaigning, because we can see how the Conservatives have driven our health and social care services into the ground. We'll also be setting out our policies for tackling the cost of living crisis and cleaning up our rivers from the appalling scandal of raw sewage being dumped in our local environments.
Daisy Cooper, can I ask, have you got a manifesto ready?
Our manifesto is almost there. We pride ourselves on being I tell you what, we pride ourselves on being a very democratic party, as you will know, and we have one final stage of the process to make sure that our internally elected policy committee can sign off the final version and cross those T's and dot those I's. Well, but we are almost there.
Right. So the general election campaign's launched, but you haven't got a manifesto. What about candidates? Have you got candidates selected for every seat?
I think we've got candidates selected in almost all of our seats, actually.
You haven't even got all your candidates lined up.
There are plenty of seats around the country where other political parties don't have their candidates in place either.
You really caught everyone on the hop.
I was just going to say, you've been caught on the hop, haven't you?
Well, I can tell you, we've got leaflets that are printed and ready to go out today.
At least you've got the leaflets.
We've got campaigners who are going to be, who've got their shoe leather ready to go and knock on doors. We are ready for this general election and we are raring to go.
Just coming back to the manifesto, I mean, perhaps if it's nearly ready, you can presumably tell us some of what's going to be in it. For example, would the Lib Dems, given the parlous state of the water industry in this country, water utilities, would you take them back into public ownership?
Well, as you know, Liberal Democrats have been leading this campaign to ban water companies from dumping raw sewage for the best part of 3 years, and it's due to our campaigning that this issue really has taken flight in Parliament. Would you take them back into public ownership, though?
Would you nationalise the water industry?
No, what we've said is that we think that you can get the best of both worlds by actually changing the ownership structure of water companies. We don't think that privatisation or nationalisation is the right answer. We want water companies to adopt a public benefit model. And what that would mean is you wouldn't have the time and expense of having to nationalise all these companies, but you would require, in law, these companies to put environmental principles over profit. We had a private members' bill in Parliament where we tried to bring about that particular change, and we think that would be the best structure for water companies.
Daisy Cooper, Richard asked you whether you would do a coalition with the Labour Party. Of course, many people remember you've already been in a coalition between 2010, 2015 with the Tory Party. How much of a millstone is that for you?
I think there is a huge amount of water that has gone under the bridge in recent years. The fact is that people need to look around. People can see around themselves just what a state this country is in. As I said before, the Conservatives have driven our health services into the ground. They're struggling with the cost of living crisis. And people want answers for the future.
We wouldn't be in that state if you hadn't enabled the Conservative coalition government of 2010. It was the beginning of a massive austerity programme that led to huge cuts in public services. Tuition fees, of course, your leader at the time, Nick Clegg, had promised wouldn't come in, lied, came in, had to reverse on that. And, of course, the post office scandal as well continued under Ed Davey's watch when he was a minister. Are you proud of your record in government?
So, when Ed Davey was in coalition government, he almost quadrupled renewable energy in this country and created new jobs, the green jobs of the future. And so Ed is very proud of his achievements in doing that. But since coalition, the world seems like a very different place. We've not only had Brexit, we've had a pandemic, we've got war in Ukraine, we have the conflict between Israel and Hamas in Gaza. The world is in a very different state, and I think people will be going into this general election thinking about what it is that political parties are offering right now. And what I can tell you is Liberal Democrats put health and social care at the centre of our campaign.
That you are campaigning against a government that people might say you enabled, because they might not have been there if the Lib Dems hadn't done that deal back in 2010. If you'd done a deal with Labour back then, we might be in a completely different position. That is what your voters might say to you on the doorsteps.
Well, there weren't the numbers to do a deal with Labour back before 2010, and as far as I'm aware, they weren't particularly interested in doing one either. But the Conservative government have been in power on their own since 2015. That is almost 10 years, right? This has been a very, very long time where the Conservatives have been in power on their own, and we can see the results of what has happened. Our country is in a complete mess. Our economy is in chaos. Our NHS has been driven into the ground. People want change, and I think the country is crying out for change in this general election.
One quick question to finish with. What do you think of Keir Starmer?
Well, to be honest, I don't really know Keir Starmer very well. I think
not personally, as a politician. What do you think of him as Labour leader?
Well, I think he's a very serious person. He's clearly a very professional lawyer. And I think he's obviously been working very hard to hold the government to account, as have we as Liberal Democrats, as another opposition party.
Sounds like it sounds like he's the kind of guy you could work with.
Well, look, between now and polling day, we are going to focus on what the Liberal Democrats are offering to the voters. And what I can tell you is we're putting NHS and social care front and centre of our campaign.
Well, enjoy your campaign. Thank you.
Daisy Cooper, thanks very much indeed.
We're joined now by the Labour National Campaign Coordinator, Pat McFadden. Were Labour taken a bit off guard by this yesterday, Mr McFadden?
Well, we weren't expecting the announcement yesterday because the Prime Minister had given us indications that he was going to wait till the autumn on the basis that his plan was working. Turns out he doesn't even have faith in his own plan. I'm not sure why anyone else should have. And therefore, he's decided to call an election now because he thinks this is as good as it's going to get. So while we weren't expecting it, we'll fight the election. We'll take our case for change to the British public out there, and we look forward to doing that over the next 6 weeks.
So you weren't expecting it, therefore you weren't ready. Are you having to run to catch up?
No, we've been preparing for some time. We know how we want to approach this election whenever the Prime Minister chose to call it. I spoke to the Labour Party staff last night. They are very up for the fight. They're in good spirits. We go into this election with belief, but also knowing the size of the task in front of us. Because asking the public to put their trust in you to govern the country is an awesome thing to do. And we know the responsibilities that come with that. So we go into it with belief, but assuming nothing about the outcome, because change will only come to the country if people actually go out and vote for it.
One of the reasons why we were asking if you're ready is because, of course, just a couple of days ago, your shadow health spokesperson, Wes Streeting, couldn't remember all 6 of your pledges. Can you reel them off quickly to us?
I've been expecting this question this morning.
I hope you've done your revision.
Go on, then.
So we're going to start by delivering economic stability to grow the economy. We're going to cut NHS waiting times. We're going to set up a new border security command. We're going to set up GB Energy, a publicly owned energy company, to drive the energy transition. We're going to crack down on antisocial behaviour, and we're going to employ 6,500 new teachers to get opportunity to children.
Can I just check you didn't have that on autocue, because that was word perfect, Pat McFadden.
He's learned it.
Not only should I learn it, but this is the core of the case that we're going to take to the British public over the next 6 weeks.
Okay. And it wasn't on, just checking, it wasn't on the screen in front of you?
No, it's not on the screen in front of me.
OK. What are you going to do about the fact that you have some big personalities in your front bench, but the voters currently don't think that Sir Keir Starmer is one of them?
Well, look, I think the Keir Starmer that people see over the next 6 weeks, they're going to see a real patriot who believes in public service and whose values are that when we get economic growth in the country, that people everywhere from all backgrounds should feel it. And most people in the course of their normal lives are not watching politics all the time. They're watching this out of the corner of their eye. They don't want the government in their face all the time. But when it comes to a general election, people do have a big choice to make.
OK,
and that choice will be...
Labour are well ahead in the polls, therefore that makes it your election to lose. What kind of a campaign, what's going to be the tone of the Labour campaign over the coming 6 weeks? Is it going to be very, very cautious? You don't want to put a foot wrong, you don't want to jinx it?
Look, I would encourage people to ignore the polls, because we start this election with not a single vote being cast, not a seat being won or lost, and we assume nothing about the outcome. And the basic choice will be we can carry on with 5 more years of what we've already had for the past 14, or we can vote for change. We're not going to approach this in a cautious manner. We're going to campaign on the policies that I spoke to you about a minute ago, but also the other policies that we've been talking about in recent years. We've not changed our strategy in the run-up to this. These are first steps in a programme for long-term renewal of the country. Well, and that's the case we're going to take to people.
We are being shouted at to let you go, because you obviously have a number of interviews to do this morning. But we have 6 weeks where we'll be examining all of those 6 pledges in greater detail. Pat McFadden, for now, thanks very much indeed.